At 14, my dad beat me and threw me out into a snowstorm after believing my brother's lie. I barely made it to my friend's house before my mom, a woman I thought was a ghost in her own home, came back the next day, found out what happened, and burned their whole world to the ground. Hey everyone. I was 14 when my father's fists taught me the real meaning of cold. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's back up. From the outside, we looked like the perfect suburban family. My dad, Brian, owned a custom woodworking business. He came home every night smelling of sawdust and rage, always going on about how hard he worked. My mom, Angela, was a freelance paralegal, a quiet woman who worked from home, paid the bills, and kept our lives running from the background. My older brother Caleb was 18, and he'd somehow convinced my father he was the second coming. He was the golden child, the star athlete, the straight-A student. Then there was me. Decent grades, a sketchbook full of digital art, and a talent for becoming invisible. I wasn't causing trouble, just trying to survive in the background. Caleb and I used to be close. We'd build forts, play video games, normal sibling stuff. But when I hit middle school, he discovered his true gift. He could lie straight to my dad's face and be believed every single time. It started small. $50 missing from mom's purse. Caleb says he saw me looking for my art supplies in her bag. I get my drawing tablet taken away for a month. A deep scratch on dad's prized workbench. Caleb swears he saw me messing with dad's tools. I spend a month sanding and refinishing it. The pattern became so predictable I started writing it down in a secret journal I kept hidden under a loose floorboard in my closet. Things got worse as Caleb realized he had a get-out-of-jail-free card for life. He broke a neighbor's window playing baseball. Told dad I threw the ball and ran. I spent my entire summer allowance paying for the repair. He failed a history midterm. Said he saw me accidentally delete his study guide from the family computer. I lost internet access for 2 months. And whenever I tried to defend myself to tell the truth, dad would just get angrier. They never believed me. I documented everything. Dates, what happened, the lie he told, and the punishment I got. By the time I turned 14, I had 53 entries. 53 times Caleb had set a fire and left me in the blaze. I'd mostly stopped fighting back. What was the point? Dad had already decided I was the problem child, the screw-up who needed a firm hand. Mom saw it all. I'd catch her watching sometimes, a flicker of something in her eyes as dad laid into me over Caleb's latest lie. She looked like she wanted to intervene but couldn't. Or maybe she was just as scared of him as I was. She'd find me later and tell me to just let it go. Be the bigger person, Jessica. Don't make waves. So I took it. Every false accusation, every unfair punishment, every time Caleb would give me that smug little smirk from across the dinner table while dad tore me down. I just endured it. That is, until the day he destroyed the only thing I had left of my grandfather. It was a vintage Leica camera, a beautiful, heavy piece of German engineering that my grandpa taught me how to use. He'd left it to me when he passed. Dad hated that I had it, said a kid couldn't appreciate something so valuable. One afternoon I came home to find it on the kitchen table, the lens shattered, the body dented like someone had thrown it against a wall. And Caleb was there, a perfect tear rolling down his cheek, telling dad he saw me drop it. That was the lie that finally broke everything. My dad had been on the phone with my mom, who was 3 hours away visiting her sick mother. I could hear his voice rising from the kitchen. I don't care what she told you, Angela, he's your son, but he destroyed it. He's lying. I stood frozen in the hallway, listening to my mom weakly defend me, her voice a thin thread against his booming rage. He hung up, the sound of the phone slamming into its cradle echoing through the house. Then he saw me. His face was a mask of pure fury. She takes your side, he snarled as if it was the ultimate betrayal. He moved so fast I didn't have time to react. He grabbed the front of my shirt, slamming me back against the wall so hard my head bounced off the drywall. The first hit was an open palm across my face. My ears rang. The world tilted. I tasted blood. He wasn't yelling anymore. It was worse. It was a cold, quiet violence. Fists now, not slaps. One caught me in the ribs. I felt a sharp, cracking pain and the air left my lungs in a gasp. Another to my stomach. I doubled over, trying to protect myself, but he grabbed a handful of my hair and yanked my head back up. I could see Caleb standing in the doorway just watching. Not a flicker of remorse on his face. In fact, he was smiling. That smile is burned into my memory. My dad threw me towards the door. The handle jammed into my spine. He hit me again. And again. I lost count. Then as suddenly as it started, it stopped. He stood over me, breathing hard, his knuckles red. Get out, he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. Get out of my house. I pushed myself up, every muscle screaming in protest. My face was on fire. My ribs felt like they were full of broken glass. But it's snowing, I whispered, looking out the window at the blizzard that was starting to rage. He just laughed. You should have thought of that before you decided to be a destructive little brat. You are not welcome here. Take what you can carry and go. I stumbled upstairs, him following me, watching from my doorway as I shoved a few clothes into my backpack. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip it. I grabbed my worn sketchbook, my phone charger, and the small hidden journal with 53 entries. He walked me to the front door and threw it open. The wind and snow blasted in, a wall of white. Don't you ever come back, he said. You're not my daughter anymore. Then he shoved me out onto the porch and slammed the door. I heard the deadbolt click into place. For a few seconds I just stood there, the snow melting on my bruised face. Then the cold really set in and a primal survival instinct took over. Move or you die. My best friend Samantha lived 12 blocks away. Felt like 100 miles. I started walking, clutching my ribs, trying to breathe through the stabbing pain. The snow was coming down in thick, blinding sheets. I was freezing, dizzy, and pretty sure I was going to pass out. I finally stumbled onto her porch and collapsed against the door, hammering on it with what little strength I had left. Her dad, Michael, opened it. He took one look at me and his face went from confusion to absolute horror. He pulled me inside just as everything went black. I woke up on Samantha's couch. Her mom, Laura, was sitting beside me, dabbing my split lip with a warm cloth. Her eyes were full of a fury I'd never seen before. Michael was on the phone in the kitchen, his voice a low, angry rumble. He was talking to the police. I told them everything: the camera, Caleb's lies, the beating, the journal. Laura took pictures of my face, the massive purple bruise blooming on my cheek and the angry red welts on my ribs. When the police arrived, I showed them the journal. They filed a report. Michael and Laura told me I was staying with them as long as I needed. That night, Laura called my mom. I could hear my mom's voice crack over the phone, a sharp, broken sound that turned into a sob. Then her voice changed. It became flat, cold, like a sheet of ice. I'll be there in 4 hours, she said. Don't let Jessica go anywhere near that house. She arrived looking like a storm cloud in human form. Her car door slammed. She walked into the house, took one look at my face, and all the warmth drained out of hers. The quiet, passive woman I knew disappeared. In her place was someone I didn't recognize. A general. She hugged me tight, her grip like steel. Then she turned to Laura. Thank you for everything. I need to go back to the house. I need to get her things. I tried to argue, terrified of what Brian would do, but she just looked at me with those new hard eyes. You won't touch me. I waited at Samantha's, watching the clock. An hour later she came back with 2 suitcases and my art portfolio. She'd gone in, packed my room, and walked out without a word to either of them. She said Caleb had locked himself in his room, and Brian just stood there, stunned into silence as she collected my life and erased me from that house. She set the suitcases down in the living room. One of them was open. Tucked right on top of a stack of sweaters was my journal. The one with 53 entries. She'd found it. She picked it up and held it in her hands, her knuckles white. I was going to file for divorce anyway, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. I was just trying to find the right time. He and your brother just made the decision for me. They chose the time. They chose the war. I'd never heard her talk like this. My mom, the peacemaker, the one who told me not to make waves, was suddenly talking about war. She opened her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. She wasn't just my mom anymore. She was Angela, the paralegal. And she was about to go to work. The look on her face told me that my father and my brother had no idea what was about to hit them. They had mistaken her quietness for weakness. They were about to learn, in the most brutal way possible, just how wrong they were. My mom didn't just make waves. She was about to become a tsunami. While we were safely at a hotel my mom had booked, my dad and Caleb started texting my phone. Arrogant, threatening messages. Things like, your mother can't protect you forever, and you'd better come home and fix this mess you made. My mom calmly took my phone, screenshotted every single message, and forwarded them to an email address I didn't recognize. Evidence, she said, her voice as crisp and clean as a legal document. Never delete threats. The next morning she didn't go to a regular lawyer. She hired a woman named Margaret, a notoriously ruthless divorce attorney known in legal circles as the Shark. Mom had worked with her on a few complex cases and knew exactly what she was capable of. They met for 2 hours in the hotel lobby. When my mom came back, she was holding a thick stack of papers. She sat down and explained the strategy. It wasn't just a divorce. It was a legal blitzkrieg. First, she filed for an emergency protective order and temporary full custody, using the police report, the photos of my injuries, and Caleb's threatening texts as justification. Second, she filed motions to freeze every single financial asset they shared. The joint checking account. The savings. Brian's business account. His investment portfolio. His retirement fund. Everything. He wouldn't be able to withdraw a single dollar without a court order. Third, she filed a lien against his woodworking shop, preventing him from selling off equipment or the property itself. She knew every account number, every password, every investment because for 15 years she was the one who managed all of it. He thought she was just a bookkeeper. He never realized she was the architect of their entire financial life, and she knew exactly where all the load-bearing walls were. The blitz was executed with military precision. By noon, the papers were filed electronically. A process server was dispatched. My father was served at his workshop in the middle of the day, in front of all 6 of his employees. One of them later told a friend of my mom's that Brian just stood there, slack-jawed, as the server handed him the stack of legal documents. He apparently read the first page, the motion to freeze his assets, and his face went white. He tried to use his company debit card to buy lunch an hour later. It was declined. He called the bank. A polite customer service representative informed him that a judicial order had frozen the account. He tried to log into his online banking. His access was locked. He called my mom, screaming, leaving a long, rambling voicemail full of threats and accusations. Mom recorded it, saved it, and sent that to Margaret too. He had spent years seeing my mother as a quiet, unassuming part of the furniture. He never once considered that the meticulous, detail-oriented paralegal who organized his life could just as easily dismantle it. He had all the brute force, but she had the strategy. He had built a business with his hands, but she was about to take it apart with her mind, piece by methodical piece, and he was realizing far, far too late that he had started a war with an opponent he had never even seen. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following week. My dad showed up with a cheap lawyer who looked completely out of his depth. He tried to paint me as a troubled, rebellious teenager, prone to lying and destroying property. He claimed my injuries were from me falling down the stairs in a fit of rage. It was a pathetic, transparent lie. Then Margaret, my mom's lawyer, stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She simply presented the evidence. She started with the official police report detailing the assault. Then she showed the judge the high-resolution photos Laura had taken of my bruised face and ribs. A quiet gasp went through the courtroom. She presented the doctor's report, confirming my injuries were consistent with a physical assault, not a fall. She read aloud the threatening text messages from Caleb and the furious voicemail from my father. Finally, she presented my journal. She read 3 entries aloud, dated over the past 2 years, each one detailing a lie Caleb told and the unjust punishment I received. The judge looked at my father, his expression turning to stone. He granted my mother the emergency protective order and temporary full custody on the spot. He ordered my father to stay 500 feet away from me and my mother at all times. Brian's lawyer tried to object to the asset freeze, but the judge cut him off. Your client beat his 14-year-old daughter and threw her into a snowstorm, he said, his voice ringing with contempt. Frankly, I think freezing his assets is the least of his problems. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright, cold air, and for the first time in years I felt like I could actually breathe. We were safe. Legally, physically safe. My mom found us a small 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood on the other side of town. It wasn't big, but it was ours. It was peaceful. The constant tension that had filled our old house was gone. There were no footsteps in the hall to flinch at, no angry voice to brace for. As the bruises on my face faded, a new kind of resolve started to harden inside me. My father was being dealt with, but the architect of my misery, my brother Caleb, was still untouched. He was the one who broke our grandfather's camera. He was the one who smiled while I was being beaten. He got away with everything. One evening, my friend Samantha and her older brother, Daniel, came over with pizza. We were sitting in my new room and I finally told them what was eating at me. Caleb's perfect grades, I said. They're not real. They can't be. He never studies. He's always out with his friends. There's no way he's a straight A student. Samantha nodded slowly. I've always thought that was weird. He's not that smart. Daniel, who was a tech genius already majoring in cybersecurity at the local college, leaned forward, his interest piqued. Fraudulent grades? At a high school level, that usually means someone is getting into the system. Their security is probably a joke. A plan began to form in my mind, a cold, clear path to justice. My mom was dismantling their kingdom with the law. I was going to dismantle Caleb's future with the truth. Our investigation into Caleb started that night. Daniel brought over his laptop, which looked like something out of a spy movie. He explained that just accusing Caleb wouldn't be enough. We needed undeniable digital proof. A breadcrumb trail that led directly to him. He called it our digital takedown. First, we needed to figure out how he was doing it. Daniel suspected he had acquired an administrator's password, probably through a phishing scam or by simply shoulder surfing a careless teacher. The first step, he explained, is observation. We need to know when and where he accesses the school network. Samantha, who was in 2 of Caleb's classes, became our inside source. She started watching him, noting his habits. She discovered he spent his study hall period every Tuesday and Thursday in the same corner of the school library, at the same computer terminal. The next phase was surveillance. Daniel gave Samantha a tiny USB device called a keylogger. It was designed to look like a generic phone charger dongle. The plan was for her to plug it into the back of the library computer Caleb always used. It would discreetly record every single keystroke. It took a week of waiting for the right moment, but Samantha finally managed to plug it in when no one was looking. 2 days later, we had our first major breakthrough. Daniel retrieved the keylogger, and when he downloaded the data, we hit the jackpot. We had it all. The username of a history teacher. The password. The exact web address for the school's grading portal. And a complete record of Caleb changing his B+ in calculus to an A-. It was the smoking gun. But Daniel said one instance wasn't enough. We needed to show a pattern of behavior. We used the captured credentials to log in ourselves. Ethically questionable, I know, but we felt it was justified. Daniel was careful, using a VPN to mask our location. We looked at the system's access logs. We found dozens of logins from that specific library computer terminal, all outside of that teacher's scheduled hours. The logs corresponded perfectly with Caleb's study hall periods. We had a clear, documented pattern. But as we dug deeper, we found something far worse. Caleb wasn't just changing his own grades. He was a gifted artist, but he was lazy. We found files on the school server containing his scholarship applications for several prestigious art schools. The digital portfolios he submitted were incredible. The problem was they weren't his. Using reverse image searches and by cross-referencing file creation dates, we discovered he had been stealing digital art from other talented students at our school, scrubbing their signatures and passing the work off as his own. One portfolio belonged to a quiet, brilliant girl named Maria, who could barely afford her art supplies. Caleb had stolen her entire senior project, a series of stunning digital paintings she'd been working on all year. This was no longer just about personal revenge. Caleb wasn't just a liar. He was a thief, actively sabotaging the futures of other students to build his own fraudulent success. Our mission had just escalated. We weren't just exposing a cheater anymore. We were fighting for everyone he had wronged. The perfect stage for Caleb's downfall was the school's annual academic awards ceremony. It was a huge event held in the main auditorium, packed with proud parents and the entire student body. Caleb was set to be the star of the show. He was receiving 3 major awards. One for maintaining a perfect grade point average, another for his outstanding art portfolio, and the big one, the school's coveted Character and Leadership Award. The irony was so thick I could taste it. My mom and I sat in the back row. My dad was in the front, beaming like a proud father, completely oblivious to the fact that his golden child's world was about to be publicly executed. The ceremony began. The principal droned on about integrity and hard work. I almost laughed out loud. Name after name was called. When they announced Caleb's award for academic excellence, he walked across the stage with that familiar, arrogant smirk. He shook the principal's hand, holding up the certificate for our dad to see. Next came the Arts Award. They showed a slideshow of the beautiful artwork he had stolen from Maria and others. My blood boiled. Finally, they called his name for the Character and Leadership Award. As he walked toward the stage for the 3rd time, I stood up. Calmly, I walked down the aisle. My mom had called the school ahead of time, warning them there might be a disruption related to academic integrity. So when my dad started to stand up, 2 campus security guards materialized and quietly asked him to remain seated. I reached the stage just as the principal was handing Caleb his plaque. "Excuse me, Principal Thompson," I said, my voice clear and steady through the microphone that was still on. I have something you need to see. It's about widespread academic fraud. A murmur went through the auditorium. Caleb's face went pale. I held up a simple black USB drive. It's all on here, I announced to the silent, stunned crowd. Video evidence of Caleb accessing the school's grading portal. Records of him changing grades for himself and 6 other students for money. And irrefutable proof that his entire art portfolio, the one he just won an award for, was stolen from other students. I placed the drive in the principal's hand. The gym erupted into chaos. Parents were yelling, students were pulling out their phones to record. Caleb just stood there, frozen, his smug facade completely shattered. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. The school launched a full investigation confirming everything on the drive. Caleb was expelled. The 6 other students he helped were suspended. The prosecutor's office filed criminal charges for computer fraud and theft. His college acceptances were all rescinded. Brian's world crumbled too. He was socially ruined, the man whose perfect son was a criminal. Financially, my mother's lawsuit had already bled him dry. They lost the house. Last I heard, he and Caleb were living in a rundown apartment across town. The victory wasn't loud or explosive. It was quiet. It was the peace in our new apartment. It was watching my mom, Angela, smile, a real, genuine smile for the first time in years. We had survived, and we had done it by bringing the truth into the light, not just for us but for every student Caleb had victimized. The real victory wasn't their ruin, it was our peace.